I really like to point out how dishonest the media is because they're the reason why we can't have nice things. Seriously, they're the propaganda arm of the United States government and everything that's wrong with the world. And I have three examples today, just recent examples from the last couple weeks, of just the egregious lying and dishonesty that these media companies are trying to pull over on you. So, one of them is the Hunter Biden laptop story. Do you remember this? In 2020, just a couple months before the election, a laptop belonging to Hunter Biden was found at a repair shop, apparently abandoned, and the owner of this repair shop became concerned because of some of the things that were on this laptop, so he turned it over to the FBI. Now, the New York Post broke this story, and they said that emails found on the laptop showed corruption. Hunter Biden was going around to companies in Ukraine and China and taking kickbacks in board positions and leadership positions in these companies, equity, stock in these companies, in order to secure them meetings with his father, who was vice president at the time. There were also emails talking about him holding a percentage for the big guy, which was, of course, Joe Biden. But at the time, the mainstream media, most media outlets, acted like this was fake news. They acted like it was Russian propaganda to try to sway the election. The Huffington Post, more than 50 former Intel officials say Hunter Biden smear smells like Russia. And what that is referring to is a public statement released on October 19th, 2020, so just a few weeks before the election. And this is where about 50 CIA spooks, 50 former intelligence people who worked for the CIA, National Intelligence, Reconnaissance, all these government agencies in intelligence, they didn't even say, no, it's not real, it is Russian propaganda. They said, we don't really have any evidence to say it is Russian propaganda, but it seems like Russian propaganda. And so every major news outlet ran with this. So this actual letter from these former CIA people said, we want to emphasize that we do not know if the emails provided by the New York Post are genuine or not, and that we do not have evidence of Russian involvement. Just that our experience makes us deeply suspicious that the Russian government played a significant role in this case. And boom, just like that, saying that the Hunter Biden laptop was real became disinformation. Twitter banned the New York Post for 2 weeks for spreading misinformation. Twitter banned sharing articles from the New York Post about the Hunter Biden laptop story. Facebook also used its algorithm to suppress this story. They said, that's disinformation, so we're going to tweak the algorithm and make sure this story on Hunter Biden's laptop doesn't show up 2 weeks before the election. And they said this was to prevent the election from being swayed. They're the ones that swayed the election. They're the ones that 2 weeks before a presidential election actively covered up and lied to pretend that it was disinformation, that a presidential candidate was absolutely involved in corruption, as the emails on his son's computer showed, beyond any reasonable doubt. And just last week, for the first time, the New York Times admitted that it was completely real, that they had authenticated the emails taken from Hunter Biden's laptop and that they were 100% real. And how did they do it? Did they announce this big thing? Did they blow it up? Did all these news organizations, which lied to you, let's be clear, this wasn't like a little mistake. They hid behind government intelligence officials to suppress a legitimate news story without doing any journalism on their own. And so there's no apologies, there's no like, oh my God, we were so wrong. The New York Times runs a headline that says, Hunter Biden paid tax bill, but broad federal investigation continues. That's going to correct the record. 24 paragraphs into this New York Times article, they finally say, those emails were obtained by the New York Times from a cache of files that appears to have come from a laptop abandoned by Mr. Biden, Hunter Biden, in a Delaware repair shop. The email and others in the cache were authenticated by people familiar with them and the investigation. It was all true. Do you think voters might have wanted to know that a couple weeks before the election? Just absolute dishonest trash in the media. That's one example. Here's another one. You might have heard the unfounded conspiracy theory that the United States was so concerned about the Russian invasion of Ukraine because the United States has bioweapons labs in Ukraine that it was afraid the Russian government was going to get its hands on. People speculated perhaps the reason that they were afraid of that wasn't so much Russia using these dangerous pathogens that the United States had been storing in these labs in Ukraine, but maybe Russia was going to expose some sketchy things that were going on with maybe enhancing viruses, gain-of-function research, which once banned in the United States, they were caught funding. Fauci's organization and the Health and Human Resources departments were caught funding the Wuhan lab in China, which was doing gain-of-function research with bat coronaviruses, okay? That was another smear that happened a few years ago when they circulated a letter saying that it was disinformation and even anti-Asian hate to say that perhaps the virus came from the Wuhan lab. And that, once again, they suppressed. Turned out that the people suppressing it were the ones that were funding the lab. Huge conflict of interest. Again, no apology. The Lancet, a medical journal, did come out with a correction to its story, but not waving the flag saying, listen up, people, we were totally wrong. Just, quick correction that this entire narrative was false. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. That's not even one of the stories that I'm talking about today. The point in this case is that these labs in Ukraine, first, it was just ignore. Ignore completely the fact that we should be concerned about these United States biolab bases in Ukraine. Then it was smear. No, that's a lie. Of course, that's a conspiracy theory. These people are crazy. Then it was, well, okay, so the United States does have some bioweapons labs in Ukraine, but they're only there to secure dangerous pathogens. We're not doing any sort of research with them. We're not doing anything unsavory. Even when they admit that they outright lied to you, they still try to cast the conspiracy theorists as the crazy ones who you shouldn't believe. The thread of truth that started this web of conspiracies was a real 2005 partnership between the US Defense Department and the Ukraine Ministry of Health. The two decided to work together to try to stop the spread of infectious diseases, not create them. Okay, the US Department of Defense's Biological Threat Reduction Program works with the Ukrainian government to consolidate and secure pathogens and toxins of security concern in Ukrainian government facilities while allowing for peaceful research and vaccine development. Our joint efforts help to ensure that dangerous pathogens do not fall into the wrong hands. Peaceful research? What is that? That's definitely Orwellian doublespeak for virus enhancement, probably. I mean, again, when the truth does come out, you go, is that really the whole truth? This is basically what we were talking about from the beginning, and you lied to us, and now you're kind of admitting bits and pieces of it. It sounds like you're doing exactly what the conspiracy theorists said you were doing. Either radio silence or outright smears and lies by the mainstream media, or I shouldn't even say mainstream, legacy media. This is not the mainstream media anymore. This is the legacy media barely holding on to their power to spread this propaganda because more and more people are waking up every day to the fact that they're absolutely so dishonest and you cannot trust a single thing they say, and you can't trust that the news that they're presenting is the whole news or even the most important news. They suppress things. And that's the third point I want to get to. Did you know that Biden appointed and the US Senate confirmed an actual eco-terrorist to head a major United States department, the Bureau of Land Management? In September, Tracy Stone Manning was appointed by Biden and confirmed by the US Senate to head the Bureau of Land Management. In 1989, she participated in a campaign to spike trees in the Clearwater National Forests in the state of Idaho. Now let me explain what spiking trees is. These ecological terrorists, eco-terrorists, would go around, it was popular back in the 1980s, and they would drive 12-inch metal spikes into trees that were going to be harvested because they were against cutting down trees, even though now we see that proper forest management is extremely important to prevent wildfires that are out of control in California, but that's neither here nor there. The point is, these crazy environmental activists were spiking trees, and what happens is when a firefighter, a mill worker, anybody else that might be cutting into one of these trees hits this metal spike with a saw, it basically creates a shrapnel grenade. Metal spikes go everywhere. The saw blade comes off. This happened to a guy in 1987, I think it was, in California. This 23-year-old mill worker, married a month earlier, had the job for less than a year, and he gets the blade comes off of his saw, almost chops his head off. It hit his jugular. He had to get facial reconstruction surgery. In his jaw, part of his jaw was missing. His teeth, he had to get new teeth. It's a miracle that he didn't die. And so these types of events have injured people in the past. And there could be spikes still out there from these psycho-terrorists, actual terrorists. This lady, who now heads the Bureau of Land Management, participated in this campaign. She retyped a threatening letter from one of her co-conspirators and sent it to the Forestry Service to try to threaten them into not harvesting trees from a particular area because they had driven spikes into these trees. Once they were caught, she wouldn't cooperate with prosecutors. Only 2 years later, when somebody turned on her, did she turn on her other co-conspirators, ratted them out, and avoided a prison sentence by testifying against her co-conspirators. But it's beyond any reasonable doubt, it's absolute fact that she participated in a ecological terrorist campaign and is now the head of a major United States bureau. But that's not even the point of what I'm trying to say. That's insane enough. But a Freedom of Information Act request. These are requests that force the government to turn over documents. It showed that NBC News colluded with the Biden administration to go easy on Tracy Stone Manning. So NBC, Josh Lederman, emails the Biden administration trying to get a comment on the story. And the Biden administration clearly doesn't want to comment on the story because they say, we want to figure out if you stand by this terrorist nominee. And the Biden administration is like, oh, it's unfortunate that you're doing a story on that. And so Josh Lederman, trying to get a comment out of them, emails back to say, we will not go overboard on it or anything. We will point out that A, she did not participate in spiking trees herself. B, she was not charged. C, this was decades ago when she was in her early 20s. And D, her record is otherwise unblemished. Otherwise unblemished except for that little terrorist incident a few years back. And, oh, I love this one. It was decades ago when she was in her early 20s, right? The media always gives people a pass when something happened decades ago when it was early 20s or maybe say teens. Remember Brett Kavanaugh? That he was accused in his teens 3-4 decades ago of sexually assaulting a woman, and that was supposed to disqualify him. This alleged thing that could not be proven at all was supposed to disqualify him from the Supreme Court, but an actual terrorist, that was decades ago. And her record's otherwise unblemished. NBC News, one of these, legacy news stations which you're supposed to trust. Meanwhile, while there's a legitimate former terrorist, domestic terrorist, in the United States government, the Department of Homeland Security, a couple months ago, issued a National Terrorism Advisory System bulletin warning that the number one factor increasing the threat of terrorism is the proliferation of false or misleading narratives which sow discord or undermine public trust in U.S. government institutions. That's the biggest threat we face, is undermining trust in U.S. government institutions. But not only that, COVID-19 mitigation measures, particularly COVID-19 vaccine and mask mandates, have been used by domestic violent extremists to justify violence since 2020 and could continue to inspire these extremists to target government, healthcare, and academic institutions that they associate with those measures. That's who you should be worried about. People who object to their freedom being destroyed by COVID measures. And the people that you don't have to worry about are the ones who actually sent threatening letters to U.S. federal government agencies, the Forestry Service, and now head one, the Bureau of Land Management. Absolute insanity. These people are so untrustworthy, and all it takes is one random guy on YouTube just going through a few basic papers to see how absurd these people are. It's just absolute propaganda. They think you're stupid. They expect you to just take whatever crap they give you on a daily basis. What it actually is, this information warfare, where will people remain under the thumb of the government and the legacy media connected to the CIA, as we talked about. And that's not even, I didn't even mention Operation Mockingbird, which literally infiltrated the media back in the day, but I'm sure you can go look that up. You've probably heard all about it. You cannot trust them. You have to take everything they say with skepticism. You have to look at the sources. And you know what? If you appreciate my analysis here, not talking conspiracy theories, because all this is absolutely legitimate. I'm linking below. I'm showing you all of the things on screen right now. If you appreciate that, hit the like button, hit the subscribe. You'll get more like this and some more exciting things that are coming out. And comment with other cases you've seen of the media lying, because this is far from all of it. This is just the tip of the iceberg. Anyway, I appreciate your time. Thanks for watching. I'm Joe Jarvis. Come back and see me again soon.